right. CFC, we have a very special guest today. We have Father Frederick Keiser, all the way from South Korea. He's joining us. Some of you know him, some of you don't, but
hello. Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm glad we were able to coordinate time zones and all that, and we were able to make this happen. So
yeah, what time is it over there?
It is 9:15 in the morning the next day. So Saturday morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So he's getting out of housework, you know.
That's right. That's actually why I was late. No.
You're never late. You're always on time, precisely when you need to be.
I like that.
So I want to start off with a little question about Korea.
Sure.
What are the Legion's plans in Korea, and what's your experience been?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So the Legion's plans in Korea. Right now we are 4 priests, 2 Wegugins, as they call them. That means that, James, you know what that means?
Foreigners. Yeah.
Foreigners. Yeah. So myself and Father Joseph Poland, we are still learning the language.
It's very hard.
I know I've been here for 4 years, and I get around but to be able to, a priest kind of needs to really speak the language fluently with homilies and stuff that you do. So I'm not quite at that level where I can do everything on my own. I always kind of have to have someone there where I'm like, hey, how do you say this? And move forward. So there's 4 of us here, and then 2 Korean priests who were born in Korea, then went to the States and then came back to work here. So there's 4 of us now. And we're trying right now. We're seeing maybe we could be 5. If James, you know this, brother Stephen is going to become a deacon soon, and he might come over here as well. So we might be 5. So that would be incredible just to see him back in his home country, flourishing. Yeah. I think
he did military service already, right?
Yes, he did. When I first got here, he was doing that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what's
Yeah.
your experience been besides the language being impossible, which I understand?
Yeah. So I love it, man. Should I get into that story a little bit of how I came over here? Let's do that. So basically, I got ordained a priest, and my first assignment, I went to Chile, South America. So I was there for 4 years, and I was really happy. Like everything was, I had a lot to do. I was working at a school there, and it was an amazing experience. But then the general director at the time, Father Eduardo, he wrote a letter to all legionaries, basically saying, it looks like, there was only 2 priests in Korea at the time, and they were seriously considering closing Korea. And you just because, and the biggest difficulty was, how do we get more people to go there if it takes them forever to learn the language? So basically he realized we need people who will go there, who will go in for the long haul and be able and know beforehand that when they go, they're going to be going for a long time, and it's going to take, a long time. So he basically asked for volunteers. It just something spoke to me, when I read that, something spoke to me. And, I actually put off, I wanted to give myself some time to really think about it and see if I really wanted to do this. So I didn't answer right away. I actually let a month or 2 go by before I wrote the letter. And I heard other people like, I'm going to volunteer and all this. So about a couple of months later, after that letter, I volunteered after really thinking about it and making sure, is this something I really want to do? And thinking about it, what motivated me the most, the reason why I wanted to, was because, I knew all of these Koreans from the apostolic school, and many of whom were still in the Legion and could become priests one day. And it would just be the saddest thing in the world if we had to close Korea and then maybe never be able to go back. You know, that was another thing I was like, you make a move like that, it's really hard to get back into it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I volunteered. And then a few months later, they told me they wanted me to try it out. So, you know, what was great about the whole process, it was very gradual. So they let me go for 3 months without making the decision yet to see if I liked it. And then I went back to Chile to think about it more. And then finally I moved definitively in, it would have been 2018 when I came. 2017, I did a 3-month long trip here, which was awesome. It was just like the cultural immersion. I loved it. Yeah. So what do I like about, after that little intro, what do I like about Korea? The food, man. The food.
Yes.
The food is so good. Yeah. Spencer, you're a Korean barbecue fan. I've heard on the podcast a couple times. Yeah.
But I don't feel like I'm getting the real deal. Like, is that your favorite food there?
I would say that samgyeopsal is probably my favorite. Yeah, but they have all sorts of cuts of meat and stuff. But I think that's my favorite food.
Yeah.
And I've had it at restaurants in the States that claim to be that, and it's just not the same.
It's not the same.
It's not
the same.
Trash. Yeah.
How do you feel about kamjatang? Potato, I think it's called potato stew.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
I like that stuff. I like all the tongs and chiges and all that stuff. And it's such a variety. I was like, you know, like it's just like I was like, and it was hard for me to remember the names, honestly. It's like, oh, this is a soup, and that's a soup, and that's a soup. You know? But they're all really different too. Now I can actually appreciate the nuances and the differences and all that. Yeah. Another food I really like is called chim tak. I don't know if you had, so good. It's like, I think the way to explain it, it's like broiled chicken with all sorts of spices and stuff in there. It's so good. Yeah.
And you can eat a lot of it and not gain any weight.
That's right. It's really healthy. Yeah. A lot of, it's great.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I'd assume you guys don't do more of the Korean stuff, like karaoke rooms and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I do.
Oh, you do?
I mean, since Corona, they're like, you know, it's hard to get into them and stuff. But I've been to a lot of them with people. I love going to those karaoke rooms, and
it's so funny.
There's karaoke rooms and karaoke rooms. Let's get, you know what I mean? But you know, there's perfect, you know, there's great ones, and I did that a lot. So my very first experience with that, the very first time I went, you know how Koreans usually sing more kind of ballady type songs?
Yes.
You know, so I found a rock song on there, Zombie by the Cranberries.
Yeah.
And
classic.
Yeah, so I was just going for it, right? I was like really singing it. And like 4 or 5 Koreans got like around the booth. They had like these booths that you have, and they were like looking inside, just like amazed. And when I finished, one of them clapped like this. Yeah, that was with Brother Steven. That was a lot of fun.
That sounds like so much fun. Yeah. Good memories. And it's a wonderful culture, and it's a great way to bond too.
Yeah. So I've been to like Jinjil bonds too. Like I've been to those. And do you guys know that they don't know what that is? It's basically a Korean bathhouse, I guess you'd call it. Yeah, like a, you know,
a spa.
Yeah, spa, but very different from stuff in other countries.
Yeah.
You just hang around in pajamas and just eat good food and just kind of chill with other people. Yeah, it's just, that's what it is. It's like, so
nice. I want to do that.
Yeah, you could actually spend the night there if you come and like you can. I don't know about now because of Corona restrictions and stuff, but like you could like just spend the night there. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I've been trying to get Spencer to come when I go for the ordination.
Yes.
I'm excited about that, man.
Yeah,
I hope it all works out. You're able to make it happen. Yeah.
That
would be great.
I mean, the 10-day quarantine doesn't sound like fun, but
yeah, that sucks.
But you know, it's worth it though. I'll plan it.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's great that you like Korea. I think it fits your personality too.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
It's a great place to spread your wings and kind of discover a culture that you'd never really think about. Now changing tune. I want to ask you about the scandal of
Okay.
2009, and I kind of want to focus on what you felt about it, how it
Sure.
affected you, because we know how it affected the Legion, but
Right.
we don't
Right.
know how it affected Father Frederick.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great question. Um, and I think it's important to talk about it, you know.
Mhm.
Before I get into it, I just want to say something that I found so great about your guys' interviews that you do, you know, with ex-legionaries who, or you know, that have been on, is while they're talking, there's been a couple interviews where all of a sudden they'll say, "Gosh, I didn't even remember that," and now that I'm talking about it, like it was like therapeutic for them, and you could tell that they were just so uh it was so good for them to just get it out and talk about it with people who would understand, you know.
Mhm.
You know, one in particular that I really liked was the interview you guys did with I knew his brother, Joseph Cunningham. I
Oh
knew
yeah.
Evan. Joseph Cunningham, he was like, no one, you know, when I talk about this, no one really gets it. Like they don't understand, but with you guys, I can talk about it. And he was one of the ones that all of a sudden was remembering things, you know. So I think this is really important. And I think legionaries need to do this too. Talk about what it was that we experienced, you know, with people you trust and all that. You know, I'm fine
Mhm.
doing it here. But you know, that you talk about it. It's so important, you know. Anyway, sorry for getting on that tangent but
That's
No,
all
you're
right.
good.
yeah. So 2009. Whoa, man. Um, so I finished my time as a dean at the Upsahl School in New Hampshire in 2008. I got to Rome, and I was actually at the general director. I was working there. Um, so I saw this all pretty up close. You know, with where a lot of the action was happening in this time. And gosh, where do I start? How do I start? So, you know, 2009, it would have been January. Was it January, February, around there when everything broke out in
Yeah.
2009? And I'll start out with this is just so you know, none of us really knew anything that was going on. And suddenly, so I was actually an assistant at the time. So I would actually, you know, help with organizing things at the house, all that, you know. And they called us together for these meetings with the rector by groups, right? So like by your little teams that you have, and we were going to have these small meetings. We usually don't meet like that. It's usually, you know, like you have everyone together. It was something special, something weird was going on. And they got us all together, and it was just, this is one of the things, like it was just so weird how it was told to us and how it was done. You know, we all got together as a group, and they just went into this whole thing about how people can fall and we can be weak, and you know, but then we can get back up and we can still be somewhere, like just this general thing, which is great for a homily, you know. But it's like, what, give me a homily, you know, if you can give me a homily, just give me a homily on Sunday, you know, like why did you call me here, like what are we getting at? And then they said something like, you know, in you're gonna hear something about the founder and Nuestro Padre. They actually use that term. You're gonna hear something about Nuestro Padre. All our listeners probably get that, right? The
Yeah.
Nuestro Padre thing.
Yeah.
If you want to explain, if any time you think you need to explain something to people, you just cut me
Sure.
off, James, and I'll, yeah.
Yeah.
And you just, you know, go in there. But so, you know, you're going to hear something about Nuestro Padre, and, you know, but people can be weak. And they actually used King David as a, you know, as something, you know, an example. And then, but the thing was, like the meeting ended, and I, you know, they asked, they said, are there any questions? And I was like, what happened? They didn't actually say what it was. I was like, well, okay, we're
Wow.
going to hear about it, but they didn't say. So I raised my hand and I was like, okay, look, what are we talking about? Like, what is it that we're doing?
What
You know,
actually
what is it
happened?
exactly that you're talking about? And the person there, you know, I'll use names sometimes, but sometimes I'll leave them out.
Fair.
But just he repeated the same thing again, and I just look, we're going to find out what you're talking about reading, so why don't you just tell us, just tell us. And in the end, he did say it. He finally said that and this is the thing too, he said it seems that the founder had a daughter, right? And so look, I get it. I get the whole, that I understand how hard it was for us to get it. But the reason I tell that story like that is because just to illustrate how difficult it was, for us to come to terms with this. And so I said that. I was like, we were actually the first group that the priest did the meeting with. Kind of, thank goodness. And he was a little mad at me at first, but he thanked me afterwards. He's like, yeah, we just need to go in straight and say. I said, yeah, you do. Like, because later on, and you got to understand back then, like there was also still, which I think is insane, but there was like a control over internet access. We had this program called Zscaler that would basically block everything. So you didn't have a lot of, you couldn't figure this stuff out, right? So I actually have another friend, a Legionary friend, who same thing happened to him. He was on practices at the time, so he was out, and he was like, at the end of the meeting, no one raised their hand. It was like, okay, what exactly happened? And so he was like, okay, I need to find out what is going on. So he actually had to go out of the house and go to an internet cafe to like hook up to the internet to be able to actually search for what was happening. Right. When it first came out, and I look back at that now and I'm like, how did we even think that was okay? The fact that it's not so much that it was hard for us to say, it's like that we would have to go to these lengths just to figure this out, and there's probably, and if this was so hard, the one that was so clear, what about all the other things? There's so many things, so many accusations that we didn't even hear of, you know what I mean? And so many things going on. And that, once I got past that first thing of just, okay, so now my information I have is that it seems that the founder had a daughter, and then, so that's the information that all legionaries have at that point, right? We're trying, newspapers are coming out. Some people are reading them, some aren't. We're not being encouraged to read them. There's not a lot of guidance of how to do it, but daily life goes on, right? So people talk about this. So we're all talking together, and the main thing that people are saying is, oh, we can all make mistakes and have it, but I heard that he could still be a saint. I was like, oh my gosh. Thinking about it now. Back then I was still like, I don't know, man. But it was hard to. It was just like, it was hard for anybody to really just say straight out what they thought, and just this slow trickle of information and assimilation and acceptance of it, and really trying to understand the full consequences of what this meant, just, it made it worse that our institution was so damaged by the founder and by, I'm just going to use this word, cult-like practices. I'm just going to use that word because I think it's the easiest to understand. Look, I wouldn't consider what we were before to be a full-blown cult. But that we had cult-like practices, yeah, like no one can deny that. That we had things that were like that. I do think sometimes for people it's just easier. Like I heard James a couple times on the podcast just say when he asked me, I was in a cult, and I think that's fine. Like I totally get what you're saying when you say that, but like the problem is that there was these things of communication of, people being able to express opinions. We were able to, there's no rule against it, but it was just all these structures that made it hard to do, you know what I mean? And all this information just coming out little by little. And obviously, it's like, dude, like everything that I thought was good about this organization, I had to put it all into question, right? And I think there's few situations that, it's just the way that it hit me. It's like, you got to question everything, and that's not easy, that's not easy. And I think, I don't know, was that similar for you guys too, when it all broke out? Like all of a sudden you have to question the whole everything. And ultimately, I think that's why it leads to, rightfully so, people leaving. You know what I mean? Like, I gotta get out of here. You know what I mean? Yeah. What do you guys think about that?
How much of what else we were taught, now was that even correct? How we're told to think or, to address certain situations.
Sure.
And it's like, I don't know if that's how we should have done that. And like, it just leads to where we are now on how we handled that.
Right. But having to question everything, that's harder for anybody, and every single person involved on any level, I think, had to do that. And I did too. And that was hard, and I not for a second want to like compare my hardships with some of the ones that I've heard on the podcast, man. But a lot of people had it way worse than I did. I'll tell some things, when we get into a little bit more, but it's just like at that moment you had to start questioning everything. So for me personally, I realized I just needed more time to think like on my own. So I was looking for, and I had quite a bit of freedom to do that, like organize not a whole lot, but definitely more than like the Apostolic School in New Hampshire, right? For you guys, that was a joke, by the way. Like, oh yeah, we got you free time. You have 10 minutes now to 10
minutes free time. Don't need to go fold your clothes, shine your shoes, clean the locker rooms, but it's free time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I just felt I needed more time to do that. So so this is crazy. So one day I loved walking on the roof of the General Directorate. There's just this great view, and you can actually see St. Peter's Dome in the distance from our roof there. So it's just a place where I could go, and not too many people would go up there. So it was like my refuge. It was a place I could go where I just needed to just be alone. And I was up there one day and just thinking about all this stuff. And we were still at the point where, I think at this point it seems like it was finally, he has a daughter, like, like that, that at least had fallen at that point. And I was just thinking and like, and suddenly I just get this realization, this flashback happens to me. And I realized, wait a second, I met the daughter. I just had this realization that I met the daughter. Like I just had this total, So I just had this flashback of something that happened to me when I was in Termini. Termini is our vacation house that we would go to in Rome. Jacob, I don't know if I would tell stories about Termini when I was at the Apostolic School. I don't know if you heard about it at all.
I know about Termini. We talked about it too, and because Shaz, was that senior year? We all went to Rome for the ordinations.
Oh, really? Nice, yeah.
So, but yes, I know about Termini.
Yeah, so I was there. This would have been 2004, right before. So in 2004 as well, Christmas Eve, I went to the Apostolic School. That's when I arrived there for my internship. But in 2004, we were all in Termini, and the founder was there, and he was there like for basically the whole summer. And it was great. I mean, we had a great time. It was just, and you'd see the founder around, but it wasn't like, the center there was just hanging out with other people. I still remember that summer with great fondness. But so something happened. The founder, they announced to the community that the founder he was going to go do like a private apostolic trip. He was going to go, and we heard all these stories about how he would go around sometimes and build chapels for poor people, or go out with benefactors. So he went out, he was around, and all of a sudden he wasn't for about 3 or 4 days, right? And he was coming back, and I was I was kind of in charge sometimes of like the guest waiter stuff. I don't know if you guys remember that, like father's waiter type thing.
Yeah.
So we were setting up, and he was going to come back late that night. And we were going to have, things ready for him in case he wanted to eat or whatever he wanted to do. And so I needed to go buy something. I think it was either bread or milk from the town that was there. So I go out by myself and I'm going out to buy the stuff. And none of you have been to Termini. Maybe you won't understand this, but there is this, to go down to the platform, we would call it. The plataforma was the place where we'd always hang out and go swimming and stuff. There's this ceramic shop that you go right in front of, this pottery shop. And then you take a sharp left and that would take you to the trail that goes down. So everyone knew of this ceramic shop that we would go to. And I was walking by there and I look in the door and all of a sudden I see the founder there. He's inside the shop, right? By himself. And at least, well, that's what I thought. I thought he was by himself. So I went in, I was like, well, what's he doing here? And the founder at this point was really feeble, like to have him walk around and stuff like so I was like concerned, like, is he okay? I thought he was coming back late. That's what they said. So I went in the shop and I was just like, and I said, Nuestro Padre está bien? Are you okay? Like, is everything okay? And he turned around, he looked at me, oh yeah, I'm fine. And I want to introduce you to some benefactors that I've been with. I was like, okay. So then this very young woman, probably 20, is introduced to me with an older woman. She's probably, I don't know. She must have been maybe 60 at that time. And yeah, the girl was going to a university in Mexico and she was doing all these things, and they both presented themselves as benefactors, people who have been helping out the Legion and going, and I met them, and the founder, he was like, oh, thank you. What were you doing? I said, I was actually getting stuff for you to come back later. And he goes, oh, okay. Tell them that won't be necessary. I'm going to be out late. And actually that I might get there tomorrow. I was like, okay, you have a place to stay. Yeah, don't worry about that. And I was like, okay. And so I went back and I told him, yeah, he's going to be out one more day. And then I went back. Yeah. So like that dawned on me. Like I had that flashback. I was like, I met the daughter. Like I met her. And later
That's insane.
It. Yeah. So I confirmed it later. I actually went with Father Alvaro and I talked to him and I was like, did I meet her? Like, he's like, yeah, you did. I was like, oh, what? I was like,
wow.
And then you know what hurt me? It was like, look, like this is just me personally. Like, if you're gonna like do something, I don't know, if you're gonna like commit adultery or like mess around with other people's wives or do what you're not supposed to do, okay, but don't lie to me. Like, don't lie to me. This is just me personally. I don't like it when people lie to me, and he lied to my face. You know what I mean?
Scarier
like,
that
personally, yeah.
It's scary that they even posed for him. Like they were like they jumped. Oh yeah,
natural.
We're like he had it. He really had it. It seems like he had them under his thumb a little bit there.
Yeah. Now I wouldn't put the blame on them so much because they were probably in an abusive victim.
Right.
Yeah.
Sort of relationship as well. But yeah, that's the scary. It's scary that they posed for him, right? That they were there. And it's just like, dude, yeah. So that dawned on me on the roof, and it just kind of hit me in a way that just made me like crumble. You know what I mean? Like I was just like, because it was like he was right in front of us doing this, and none of us questioned that stuff. Like it's like, it's not just, is this his daughter? It's like, okay, he's in charge of the Legion. He's supposed to be leading by example. And, none of us get this chance to go out on trips for 3 days and do all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to come back tonight. And it's like, who else gets to do that? You know what I mean? Like who, and in any organization, if you want a good, healthy organization, no matter what you are, you want your bosses doing the same things as everyone else and actually caring about you. Right. There was just this, why didn't any of us question this huge disconnect that there was? it was right in front of our eyes. You know what I mean? Like it was just right there. But and this is the worrying thing, the thing that kind of Spencer was saying, the scary thing is that none of us were able to see this. Now I don't think anybody there, maybe there was one or two that knew something, you know, but we're actually covering for the founder at that point, because looking later on, it seems that Father Alvaro knew he knew in 2005 about the daughter. So that was later, that after this point, right? But you know, and then it took so long to get that information out. Like that's all bad. I'm not, you know, all that is messed up, but it's just like, why weren't we able to detect this stuff? And I think one reason thinking about it is like, dude, I was just having the time of my life with my bros, you know, like that summer was so much fun. And we were just having such a great time. And it was so positive and a lot of loving atmosphere. You know, there was weird stuff that you look back, you're like, how did we even deal with this? You know, like, how do we not say anything? Like all these things, you know, like there's so many things that now I look back, I'm like, I can't believe we used to do that stuff, you know? And I would explain it away. People would ask me, and I'd be like, yeah, I got all the answers, and you just explain it away. And it was just this kind of, these cult-like things that would happen. Yeah. So that broke me. That was the moment when it really hit me personally, and it just kind of broke me. And it was like, you know, can I continue? Like that was definitely a question. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I had to work through that all. So
yeah. So that was 2004. It was right before you entered a second phase of weirdness. I would say. Yeah. Your time in New Hampshire. I mean, I remember it fondly. I thought you were a great superior. I'm not trying to blow smoke. I honestly believe that you were one of the better ones. You seemed caring and kind, and you would listen to people.
Yeah.
Even though you were intense.
Yes. I still am. Still am, by the way. Yeah.
Well, you're in Korea. I don't think you'd be mild. So what? I mean, I think we're gonna have some questions for you as far as what was it like being a dean, but what was your experience like being thrown over at the ripe young age of 20 something?
Yeah, how old were you when you started being a dean there too?
I was 20.
20. Okay.
You were 20?
That's crazy, huh?
That's insane.
That's crazy.
That's so much responsibility.
Wait, I'm trying to make sure that that's right. Yeah, when I got there, I was 20, and I turned 21 the 2000. Yeah, I was 20.
Holy cow!
Holy cow! That's insane.
Yeah, that's crazy. I love it.
You know, and I hadn't even, so I got sent there early. So I didn't even finish my philosophy at that point, because they call me kind of, and so I was even less prepared than, you know, than others were. So than others weren't, I guess, because I don't feel like any of us were prepared for that, you know. You know, and yeah, like looking back, I feel like I needed so much more training and than I had, you know. And it was I think there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes that you guys didn't see with deans, like with how we would do things. And it was tough. And I have to say that I think I was a little bit of a contrarian, maybe a lot of bit of one among the deans. I could tell some stories about that. Yeah, but it was tough. But I do have to say, like, my favorite moments were when we got Keiser King at meals, and I would just talk to you guys, and I would like, you know how we had the table seats, I would always invite other people to sit next to me. Yeah, because it was just like, I just needed to rotate. I actually would invite James a lot. I remember James and Spencer. I just like have you guys over. We talk about
so much fun.
Yeah, just everything. Spanish night. Were you guys there for the Spanish?
Yeah,
streets?
yeah.
There we go. We talk.
Yeah.
You know, and then another moment for me that was really important was the hikes.
Yes, that
was like the moment where I felt that all of you could connect with each other, and then I could connect with you guys as well. It was like I loved the hikes. Not necessarily, I like hiking, but also it was just more actually being able to, and that was what kept me going. because it was physically and emotionally draining. I look back now at the schedule and rhythm that we had, you know, which I'm not trying to brag, it was tougher than what you guys had. Way tougher. And what you guys had is tough. Like I look back at what you guys had and I'm like, you know, it was just it was insanity, man. It was insanity.
Because it was nonstop too, right? Like you'd wake up earlier than us, you go to bed later than us.
Yeah,
never really had your own
rounds,
community,
right?
Yeah,
we're walking around. Yeah. And there was just a lot of pressure. There was so much pressure on us to have, and this was my kind of big beef, to have the perfect community, you know, like it was just like you gotta have, you know. I don't know if you guys remember this, Spencer and James. When I first got there, they had something called the co-founder card.
Yes.
Did you guys experience that?
We had the co-founder card. Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw that going in. I was just getting introduced to things. So I was just kind of listening and seeing, you know, when you first get somewhere, you just kind of take everything in so you understand what's happening. And like I looked at the co-founder card concept, and it was basically you had your card and you had a specific, really specific things like keeping silence and keeping your locker clean and being punctual and all these things. And if you had, you know, if you did those things enough, or you didn't have a certain number of strikes, I can't remember what the number of strikes was or whatever, you got your co-founder card taken away from you. Mm-hmm. And then you couldn't go, like, I think movies was on the table. Like you couldn't go movies or other things like that, certain prizes. And I was very uneasy with that. Like I was just like that. This is putting so much pressure on my people. And the thing is, like, I focused on my group. It's just like, it's so much unnecessary pressure. So early on, a couple of months in, every Tuesday we would have like a formators meeting while you guys were in class, right? We'd have a meeting together. And those are some of the most intense meetings I've ever had.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, but so in one of those meetings, I said, like, look, I think this co-founder card idea, I think it's crazy. Like I just said, it's not helping. And they're like, what, you don't like being a co-founder? I was like, no, that's not what I said. Like, I mean, now, it's like, no, I think that, and I articulated it this way. I said, look, I don't think these kids, we're not supposed to try and make these kids faithful legionaries, or that's not the point. Where, you know, the whole point here, it doesn't matter if a kid makes his bed well or arrives on time, and there's just this external pressure on these kids to do this. That's not what it's about. You know, it's about them being happy, you know, and going into, you know, more spiritual things with me, about them feeling God's love and feeling loved by God, and putting all these, you know, I actually said, this feels kind of pharisaical to me, you know, like you're putting all these extra burdens on people that we don't have to. Right. And I got like crushed in that meeting, man. Like they were like, and so they had to end it early. And then like Father David called me later and we talked, and he actually said, I think I saw what you were saying. And you know, I was like, okay. And then the next meeting we brought it up again, and I was able to express a little better. It took like 4 or 5 meetings to get this across. And then we finally did away with the co-founder card. Like we were just like, okay, you know, but that, like, something so simple like that shouldn't take a month to figure out like what you're doing. You know, it was just the process of changing things, or changing how things are supposed to be done, was just so slow because of the cult-like mentality that we had sometimes. Right. And so, you know, I changed a lot of things, man. Now you're like, okay, things didn't like to change, to give you guys 20 minutes of free time, like to just free time again, you know, but like, even to get that, I worked at that. Like I was like pushing so hard to get you guys extra time to do things like that. And it was just, and there were others too that would help me. I'm not going to say like I was the only one. Like, I feel like Father Justin too, you know, he was really working to do things like that. But it was just, I look back at some of the things that we would have you guys do, and I'm just like, wow, I can't believe that I thought this was okay. So a couple of things that I go back to are like, you remember that the little conch exam sheet that you guys would do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I get up quickly?
Yeah.
Did I
Yeah,
make my
yeah.
bed?
Did I make my bed?
How ridiculous is that, right? It's just like,
Did I recite the Te Deum?
look, I'm all about self-reflection, like going in and seeing yourself, trying to better yourself through self-reflection, but you don't do it by a bunch of, really specific little details, little external things that people do does not define who a person is. And
Right.
like everything, I think all of us would say back then too, what I just said to be, yeah, that's true. But then we have everybody check themselves on a whole bunch of little small details, and they're defining if they're good or bad people according to that. It's like, it was insane. It was just so crazy. I don't think half you guys even did it. Like, you were just going,
Yeah.
That's true.
up and down. Thank
Sometimes-
God you didn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm happy you didn't do it. But
Yeah.
like, and then like the night notes every day.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah. We call them love letters to Father David.
So sometimes somebody would write something like, I'm mad at Father Frederick or Brother Frederick back then. I'm mad at Brother Frederick. And then Father David would call, hey, this guy was mad at you. Do you know why? I was like, no. I don't know what I did. Or yeah, sometimes it'd be like, yeah, or whatever. So then I'd go, and if I got it, I'd go. But the thing is, it was tricky. I was like, well, can I go to this guy and ask him, hey, is everything okay? Because he wrote it for David. So then I'd find a roundabout way to just encounter the person and be like, hey, is everything okay? Like, and sometimes I found out people would just troll me, because they knew that Father David would talk to me. So there was one in particular, he would just troll me. Yeah, no, but it was good. A lot of fun things like that. Or like, all the super specific norms of how to eat, the norms of urbanity, like that doesn't define a person as good or bad. And like, that's the only thing a lot of times we would talk about. And now when I preached, like, we do like the spiritual reading, and we had to read the founder stuff, which that's crazy too. I would never really talk about the founder though. Like I would talk about, how do you be a good person? Like, how do you love? I always talked about love. I remember that a lot.
I remember that too.
Yeah.
I always talk about love and caring for others and looking out for others, and doing that. And then, so it's like, I'm preaching all this, but then I have to externally like demand all these other things. And, I was able to find a balance back then. Like, I feel like I touched a lot of people. That came out wrong. I touched people's hearts in the right way. Sorry, Dad.
Oh no, this is the place.
You got to be careful.
Yeah.
That I helped a lot of people. And was able to, even amidst all of the rules and all of that going on,
Yeah.
So it was rough, man. Like, so another thing, this was kind of interesting. The academies, the academies?
Those are
Oh
fun.
yeah.
Yeah, I like those.
I hated the academies. I hated it because it was like, so, they say like, you guys prepared them. You didn't prepare them.
No, we didn't do
prepared
anything.
No,
Yeah.
we barely memorized my lines.
Right. So, but I want to say something about, like, Father David, he caught something early. So you guys know in 2006, the founder was asked to leave to live in a private life, a life of prayer and penance, and was asked to step down, and he kind of did, but kind of didn't all, so all that I think you guys know about. But after that, Father David just had this kind of intuition. He just said, in the academies, no more quoting the founder.
Yeah. I remember that.
So I was like, okay, I was trying to I was kind of asking him why. And, he said, look, I just got my doubts, man. I was like, okay. I was like, fine. And we went into, actually, it was a lot better, because I felt we were going into like letters of St. Paul and stuff, instead of, because I think it was the year of St. Paul or one of those things in the academies. And I
Very
just
good,
felt like
very good.
the academies are so much better after that. Like after we stopped quoting the founder. But like, you know, he caught on to, you say anything you want about Father David, but he would catch up, he would catch on to certain things. And you know, it would take some work, but you could talk to, like you could, I had so many conversations with Father David where we were able to, you know, change things and work on things. I was able to do that. Now I think you need a certain personality to do that with Father David. I think I have a fighting spirit, and I actually have very fond memories of my conversations with Father David. But again, too, I think the Legion did him kind of a big disservice too, of just keeping him there for so long. You know, like anybody, he was so long, right? He was like 15 years there, and you need changes, you know, and that's one of the things that we've been doing, changing out superiors more, rotating people. You know, you get stuck, you know, and so.
Yeah, we're a little bit critical about Father David on this podcast, but you know, any insight
I understand that.
But to give credit where credit is due, I do remember him coming down after we prepared our Nuestro Padre Academy, and he said, "Hey, we're not going to do this. We're going to do St. Paul because of because of the recent things that have been happening, and you know this and that." So that is something I kind of forgot. But that is true. He did see it a mile away.
He did.
Yeah.
And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you know, and gosh, you know, it's like, and I think too, some people, I'm not trying to justify me or anyone else that, you know, had you guys do these things, that I look back now and it's just so crazy. I can't believe that I didn't protest this. I mean, I protested certain things, but like, you know, it just shows you how much we were all in the mindset, right?
Yeah.
But those things came from on high too. You got to understand that back then we didn't have, like, you have a rector, right? But he didn't have a lot of leeway to do things, right? It was very, very centralized, and everything was dictated through our norms. And we had these things called protocols that would come in down to the detail, right? And the rector had some power to change things and do things, but probably a lot less than you guys think, right? It was, or, you know, they could do it if some rectors were really good, and they would like change things and do things that kind of go against the protocols that were given and stuff like that. But it was hard, man. Like it was definitely something. But I look back now and I'm like, that was just so, I cannot believe, you know, some of the things that we had you guys do.
One of the things that I want to ask you about how you felt, and this isn't a blame game, but I just wanted to know, opening letters and reading letters that we sent home.
Yeah, man.
I don't know how that, because you were an apostolic too, so that happened to you too.
Sure. Yeah.
So how did you feel about it?
So for me personally, when I was an apostolic, my dad didn't have a problem with it because of this. He was a seminarian too before, right. And they would also do that with the Jesuits, but the Jesuits stopped doing it like after Vatican II, right? So my dad was a Jesuit before them, but they stopped doing that like after Vatican II. So in that sense, he was kind of okay with it, and I was okay with it. And you know, they didn't know. I don't know if everybody knew, but supposedly the parents knew that this was happening. So okay, so fast forward to when I'm a dean. Okay, so this was interesting. When I'm a dean, you know, I'm told that I'm supposed to read your guys' letters, and you know, and just go through them, and you know, make sure that you guys have your letters home. One thing too is that you always had to write your letters home, right? No matter what. And you know, so I would go through, you'd leave them unsealed, and then I would go through and, you know, check them off that you wrote it. You know, I'd have a checklist to make sure you wrote it. And if you didn't, I'd have you, you know, I was told to go and get you during recreation to write the letter and you know, all that. So it's just, you know, it's just crazy. So I actually went to Father David. I was like, Father David, what am I doing? Like when I'm checked, like what am I looking for? Like what is it? What are we doing? You know, like when I check these letters, he said, and he was just like, look, you really don't have to check every single one. It's just to see, you know, so you can know the kid, his circumstance better. I was like, well, I can just ask him. Right. It's like, you know, and he goes, you don't really have to just, you know, I'm not expecting you to check every single one. So I personally just made the decision. I didn't check any of them. I would just seal them. And you know, and I think the first couple times I did, and then I asked the question, like, what am I doing? Like, I don't even understand, like, what am I looking for? And I would just seal them and put them in and send them off. But that did backfire on me because there were a couple pre-candidates who, so they just had a phone call and then they had to go write their letter. They just got off the phone. So this pre-candidate wrote a very funny, I thought it was funny, sarcastic letter describing every movement he made to get up out of the chair and go into the classroom and write the letter. And then and actually he sent it home, right? He sent it home and it got to the parents and the parents kind of commented on something. And then it came back to me and he was like, well, why didn't you catch it? I said, well, you said I didn't have to check them all. Right. And he's like, yeah, that's true. And I just slipped. And then that was it, you know? So it's just like, just looking back, it was insane. It was insane. And you know, I really didn't see anything or use any of that information, at least with my people, you know, and I'm not trying to blame other deans that would read through them. I mean, yeah, it's not good. I think now, like anyone would say, you know, that's not cool. You know, like I think a parent has the right to do that to their kid, but they'd only do it too if they see something. You know what I mean? Like a parent might look at a kid's phone or something if they see something's going wrong. And I don't know. I think they have a kid at a certain age, you'd have a right to do that. But even definitely. A teenager, I'd be like, you know, I think a parent would do that only if they really felt like something very dangerous was happening with their child. I don't know what you guys think about that, but just looking back, no, it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool. And I'm not just trying to like, say, you know, I really didn't do it. And I would just seal them and check them off and then go after the guys that didn't write letters home, which I also think is dumb now, but like, it's just like, it wasn't cool, you know? And then we, you know, later on too, like all of our emails were always checked, right? We had this whole system where the assistant would go. So I just made a Gmail account on the side. And started using that for like all my stuff. That was a little later, you know, but it was just now none of that happens anymore. Thank goodness. Like you know, I said, like in any organization, if like a superior sees something maybe in twos that maybe something criminal is happening or something like that, then they could do something, you know, check their emails but that's like, we're talking, you know, like grave investigation that you're doing. You know, so, but like even those details took so long for us to like realize this isn't right. You know, it took us years, you know, and we're still doing it today. You know, it's like there's still little things that we're figuring out today. And I have conversations with legionaries a lot, like, hey, I don't think that there are still things, ways of speaking, ways that we do things with people that just aren't there. It's not good, you know, it's not cool. And that was definitely one of them, man. And you know, sometimes I feel bad. Sometimes it's like, okay, I personally didn't try and hurt anybody, you know, but I probably did, you know, I definitely did, you know, but it was more with these cult-like things that just kept me blind. How could I have been so blind? Now I feel like I would catch them all. Like, I feel like now there's, you know, and maybe we can go into that a little bit, like what's changed since that stuff. But you can have your own opinion, you can express it, you can argue, you can, you know, call out stuff. You can have people you depend on, real solid friends, like tight friends. I don't, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes people had the experience in the Legion of like, the universal charity thing, which there's some truth to the universal charity concept, but it's not don't have friends. Right? That's not it. That's not it at all. And now like I have, and part of my personality too, I've always had that in spite of, the Legion cult like stuff. I was always able to have like solid friends. If like I consider Father Justin Keelhorn to be, one of my best friends. I have Father Brian Coe is another one. Probably you guys don't know these people, but I have really solid friends that I can work through things with and I can talk about it. And that's changed, that wasn't, or at least like it's encouraged now. Like that's changed. Like that type of relationship is encouraged now, and that's really important. And I think it's something, from what I've heard on the podcast, none of us really had,
Yeah. It was
True. I mean, anytime you started getting close with a brother, another apostolic or whatever, is like that's when
particular friendship, right? Like,
yeah.
particular friendships, but then like teams would change. Like you could almost guarantee like once that team really started meshing, you would have a whole other team set.
Yeah.
Or like a whole other table or whatever it was. And it was just one of those, it's like, really?
Yeah.
Like now I can't even talk to them because they're in a different section or a different team or whatever. And it's just like, I get it, because you need to be, again, universal. But at the same time, it's like, no, I'm still going to talk to them. I mean,
and you can't force that universality. If you force it, it's not universal, right?
No.
So it's like, and it was like with these external things, we were trying to force all of these attitudes that you need to do on your own. And you need to be when we speak about them, you have to speak about them more in a psychological and spiritual way, and not like, hey, if you do this, this, and this, and this, you're going to be a good person. That's not how it works, man. You don't just check off things and then you're a good person. It's so much more than that. And I think that sometimes in the way that we lived in the Legion, it was kind of reduced to that,
Yeah. That's
Do you still find yourself because it seems like you've had a contrarian thread. Do you still kind of find yourself in that vein sometimes here and there, or
less and
just
less
in general?
Sure. Less and less for sure, because it's just, I don't find a lot of legionaries anymore that I need to be contrarian to.
Sure.
Now I'm a conflictive person. I like, do I like conflict? No, I don't like conflict. I think that conflict is necessary. And when you get on the other side of it, things are way better, like, so I do not, since I was a kid, I have never, if I see something's wrong, I say it, like, and I've always done that. And that's helped me in this whole process, and hopefully other legionaries as well. But it's like I feel bad. I'm like, okay, I was, because I had this, maybe I was able to make it through, but not everyone is me. So I feel sometimes I look back and I just feel so bad for people who have a different personality and maybe weren't able to fight like I did. And they would get trapped in this dark cloud that I haven't experienced, but people in the podcast that have talked have. And it actually got me emotional listening to the dark cloud that these people had over them and how trapped they feel, like Joseph Cunningham was talking about PTSD, with this. And that's awful. And it's just, I don't want that to happen anymore to people, and I, in this institution, I don't want anybody to feel like that anymore. And so if I see any other legionary talking in ways that could make that happen, I confront them, and I say, hey, you might not think this way, but you can't talk this way anymore. Like, we have to switch our gears and really put the person is first, and not his mission or souls or fidelity. The person is first. And that's the most important thing. And so many people lost their personalities. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying by that, but they don't even know who they are. It's like some of you guys are heard in the podcast. You're like, okay, who am I? It's like, I don't know who I am. Like I was some Legion dude that would comb his hair like everybody else the same way and all this, like I had no personality, and now, we are encouraged much more to have like our own personality now, you know what I mean? Like, and to have hobbies and really find ourselves, yeah. Sorry, I rambled on a little bit there, but it's just, it's like, I don't want that to happen again to anybody if I can help it. And so in any community that I'm in and the dealings that we have with Rain and Christie people, with anybody that we deal with, they're not going to get trapped, and, there's a couple things I think a point, what about time, James? Like, can we just keep going if the conversation's going? Or, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was worried about you not having enough time.
Oh, I have time. I'm enjoying this tremendously. So,
okay.
Blocked off the day.
Yeah. Good morning, at least. Yeah, I got it.
Good morning.
The podcast. So you guys talked to the Watkins sisters. Yes, that was a great podcast.
Yeah.
That was awesome. It was
cool.
so good. Yeah. But it also made me the saddest. Like, it was just the dark place that they went through. Right. And I'm not doubting anything. All that stuff happened everywhere, man. Like these are just a few stories, but stuff like that would happen everywhere. And a really important point that they brought up that I find myself like, this is really important, is to have the space of a spiritual director that is not your superior, someone who's, I'm thinking about it now, an analogy, the way we had it before, this is just an analogy, but it's like as if the detective who's investigating your case is also your lawyer.
Yeah.
Imagine that for a second.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's ridiculous.
What? Yeah, that's how it was though. Like, it was like somebody who could, like, if the detective was against you, he's also your lawyer. So like, and so, like, that's not cool. You know what I mean? But now they even mentioned, like, in canon law, we were not doing things correctly, of having a space, someone that you choose that you can fight in so that you can actually find your own way. You know what I mean? Like, you can actually go. And the role of the superior is like a boss at your job. He's got certain things that you need to do, certain expectations you have. And you talk about those things, but you don't talk about, you talk to your therapist. I guess it'd be more like a spiritual, just to understand, like, it'd be more like you talk to your therapist, and that therapist with you has, what's it called? A confidentiality agreement. Like you don't talk about that. So that we needed that in the Legion, and we have it now. It took a long time. Like, we had it on paper for a while because we were like forced to do it, but now it's actually a reality. Right. And, sometimes I still hear legionaries that are like, I just prefer to do it with my superior or whatever. And I always talk to them. I'm like, dude, that's not, no, don't do that. Don't do that. But not because the superior is a bad person. It's like, it's because you need that space to actually find out who you are. And what they did to, I can't remember the name of which sister it was,
Amelia,
the one who was lesbian.
Yeah,
that was awful.
Yeah.
Like,
truly horrendous. Like,
not just tell her to leave.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what? I was like, I couldn't believe it, but I believed it in the sense that it happened, but I was like, wow, and part of my process of going through all this, it's actually been really helpful to hear the stories of ex-legionaries, because you start to realize, okay, what is it that I need to change so that this never happens again? And hearing these stories, it really helped me. And then I will talk to legionaries. And again, I'm saying it's like, it's getting a lot better, but I'll still hear things sometimes. Like, you'll hear the occasional, someone's talking about a kid that they met or something, and they'll be like, yeah, I think that guy has a vocation. Right. And so I hear that and I stop, like, no, hold on, stop. Like, just because he's got talents that you think could be used to be a priest, or that doesn't mean that guy has a vocation. The only person who's going to know that is him.
Mhm.
And with the guide of someone or whatever, and him and God. But you can't know that, right?
Yeah.
And even if you are his spiritual director, you shouldn't talk about it because it's confidential. So
Right.
stop it. Just go through. I'll be like, no, like I'll go and I don't hear it very much anymore. But sometimes I still hear little things like that, right? And we really need to change how we see things, right? And honestly, we've come so far.
Mhm.
Like there's still so much more we need to do, but we've come a long way. And listening to Joseph Allen's podcast, he was talking about his brother, Father Terrence Allen.
Yeah.
And he was like, I just feel like he's not the culty weird type. He was like, he's normal. He's a priest and stuff, and maybe I'm not in agreement with it, but he's like, I just hope more and more that people are able to find that we are like that now. We're not the same culty weirdness that we were before.
Yeah.
And you do that one person at a time, one priest at a time, one brother at a time. And we're really trying. Like, guys, we're trying. And all of these stories, if people who've been on the podcast before are listening now, like, I validate everything you said. Like, your story it's incredible that you guys are coming out of the darkness and getting to the light, and my story, it's a little different, but what I feel my story is like, it's like, are any of you Marvel fans? Like,
Yeah.
you watch Marvel stuff, or at least know about it. So like, I feel like my story is more like Captain America, the Winter Soldier one, where all of a sudden they realized the whole time Hydra was in charge. And like, there was underneath this thing that they weren't aware of that was causing problems this whole time. And then all of a sudden you're aware of it. Now, what are you going to do? Right? Are you going to, obviously we have to get rid of it, but then there are things that made bad. So now you have, I actually really like that, because for me, Captain America has to go through this whole process. Like, do I just leave, or do I try and make it better? I'm in the camp. Look, I'm really trying to make it better so it never happens again. Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying my best, man, and I just feel like and I don't think our stories invalidate each other. I don't think they do. I feel like, I hope they don't, maybe you guys disagree with that, but I think there's a way that my story can be a good story, and your guys' stories can be good stories as well. Does that make sense? I hope I expressed myself well.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you caught any of our live stream that we had with a bunch of ex-legionaries, but we had a call.
Okay.
And we had John Paul Lennon on.
Oh yeah, I like that guy.
He's great.
I haven't talked to him personally, but I've heard occasionally some YouTube videos he does and stuff like that.
He's a great man. But we were talking about how discernment wasn't really the it didn't seem like discernment of the vocation was the goal, and it seemed more like it was assumed that you had a vocation and just suck it up and go. And then for some people that works because they did have a vocation,
right?
And for some people it doesn't because they didn't. And that's how we end up in this little quagmire where we have people telling stories that seem to contradict each other, but at the same time, it can all come from the same place. Right. And I think that's important, and that's why we're really happy to have you on, because it's good to hear from someone who had good experiences and came out with a positive outlook.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to say, like, after everything came out, I started to think too, like, how was I hurt? Like what things in formation, and it affects everybody differently. Like, and that's something beautiful about your guys' podcast too, is that you really get different reactions. Joseph Allen, when he was on, I remember him saying, like, look, it didn't really affect me that much. Like, I mean, my personality and stuff. I mean, I recognize the cultiness, and we can talk about that. And I think everyone should.
Mhm.
You know, like if you were in the Legion and you don't recognize it, well, you're still in the cultiness. He was like, you know, it didn't affect, it's just, I'm just me, you know, and didn't, and he even said, like, I feel bad sometimes, like, should it have hurt me more or things like that. And I think the answer to that is no, it's like, you shouldn't feel bad. But I was thinking about like what are some things that happened to me? So I have some stories, like so when I was a novice, this really bothered me. And when I was a novice, I was going to go to profession, right? And it was like that time when the novices were thinking, do I profess? Do I not profess? Did any of you get to that point in the Legion?
Yeah.
No, not me. No.
Okay,
Yeah,
Spencer,
I did profess.
Oh, you
I
did?
actually
I didn't
did.
know
Yeah.
that. Okay, yeah.
Then 3 months later, I was gone.
Yeah. That's happening a lot less now because I think like people are actually discerning, you know,
Right.
instead of just being pressured in by a group and stuff. But this was an example of being kind of pressured in. So at Salamanca, where I did my novitiate, they had this swimming pool with this probably not legally high diving board. Like it was so high. Like this thing it was probably, I don't know, man, 4 meters, which is, sorry, I think in meters.
12 feet.
It's like
maybe?
12,
13,
really high, just
13
really
feet, yeah.
high.
That's
Yeah,
scary.
and there was a tradition that was happening like for the past 4 or 5 years at that point, that anyone who was going to profess, they couldn't profess unless they did a backflip off of the high dive. And
oh my gosh,
you know, so at that point, people, you know, some were just super athletic and they do it. And they're like, yeah, I can profess. And like you go and, you know, I know it was kind of a joke, but it kind of wasn't. Like it was like both. And I was scared out of my mind. I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't, you know, and I saw some people try and they were doing like belly flops and landing on their back really hard. It was like slipping. It could be deep. Like,
yeah.
first of all, I'll jump off it maybe. But like, so, you know, it was like we would have, you know, time in the swimming pool like for a month or two. And there was all this pressure. You had to do the backflip in order to be able to profess. And it was just all this pressure on me. Like, why did I need that pressure? So anyway, it comes to the point where the assistant actually calls me out and says, like, you need to be like in a private conversation. He's like, you need to obey. And I was like, yeah, but I'm like, I don't understand this, you know? So he pulled out on me. Do you guys remember prompt, motivated, heroic?
I do.
Yeah. So he goes, you know, you're not being, you know, you should be heroic. And I was like, look, I could be prompt, I could be heroic. It's prompt, motivated, heroic. There's a fourth one I'm not remembering, but you know, but I'm like, the thing that's getting me is the motivated. I don't understand how doing a backflip off of the high dive has anything to do with me being able to profess. Motivate me, like give me a real reason why I should do this. And so then the assistant, he kind of like stopped the conversation. Then I was told later that I didn't have to do it. And then they stopped the tradition. So I think I actually kind of helped stop that tradition.
That's great.
Oh, you didn't actually do it?
No.
Good for you.
Good. Yeah, I didn't do it.
Rebel.
You know, but it was like, why was that pressure there? You know what I mean? And there are more things like I look back and I'm like, why would anybody do that? And why was that there? Look, I understand like having a mystique and like that could have been a joke, but no one should be forced to do that. And you can't use, a good superior would never use obedience to have someone do something like that. It's got nothing to do, you know, there are other things that would. It'd be like, okay, no, you've got to do this because it has to do with who we are. But doing a backflip of a high dive have nothing to do with my being able to profess or not. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, so stuff like that, you know, I look back and I moved it too a little, you know, we all are. I think, you know, and you have to recognize it. Like you have to go in and recognize them and say what happened so that, you know, it's like therapeutic. The first thing is to recognize how you were hurt. And I don't want to get into too much like stuff like that, but I was hurt too, you know, and then for me, it was good to see it too. Cause it's like, okay, what do I do differently now? So that I don't ever do anything even close to this to other people, you know? Yeah.
That sounds like a hazing ritual.
It kind of was.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a fraternity bar to entry.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. It's the same age, college age.
Yeah. I guess that's what it was. Yeah. But the thing is that the novice instructor was promoting this.
Yeah.
Right. And I think he was
That's
doing
weird.
it initially just that. Yeah. Right. And he would say it. He would come out and say it. And then, he would leave and stuff. I don't think he was like checking off. Like, I hope like checking off, making sure everybody did it. But then I was called out, like my assistant came to me, like the one below him. And he was like, you got to be obedient, man. And then
it's crazy.
I was like, yeah, that's crazy. And there's lots of little things like that. Yeah.
So what, sorry, I'm trying to think. What do you think your happiest moment in the Legion has been?
That's a good question.
Besides ordination. Got to take away a freebie.
Yeah. I think it's got to do with moments where, and I hope everyone gets to feel this in their life at some point, where you just see, okay, everything's lining up, right? Like everything, the dark moments that I have in my life, they're all lining up, and now I can kind of make sense of them, right? I've had some actually, maybe we get into this a little bit, like right from the beginning of my journey to the Legion and the priesthood, I had some dark moments, I can make this a lot longer. Do you want me to just tell my kind of how I started the vocation story quickly? I don't want this to go on forever, but I could do a short version of that, and that'll get to your question, the happiest.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I entered, when I first went to visit the Legion, I had already, I had a very wonderful parish priest named Father Dan, who I just thought was a wonderful person, reach out to all sorts of people. And I, since I was a kid, wanted to be like him and, be a priest like him. And then, I found out about the apostolic school. 2 legionaries came by, and just the possibility of being able to pursue, or at least look into, a priestly vocation at that age was something very attractive to me. And again, I was 10, and looking back, it's like, how did I even have the perceptiveness to feel this at that age? I think sometimes some people, you just get a certain feeling, and that I don't see in a lot of other 10-year-olds I know now. You know what I mean? Like it's, and again, I feel like I had this very strong intuition of what I wanted to do with my life at that age. And it really came from me because, I didn't go with a group I went by myself. Like I organized it myself and my parents, and we went. I wasn't in ECUID. I didn't do any of that. I went there myself when I was 10 to visit the Legion for the first time. And when I was there, I just had this moment where, gosh, I hope you guys can relate to this. It's just, you have a moment sometimes when you're just like, I'm where I'm supposed to be. Like this is good. And maybe you don't have the answer to all the questions of your life, but you're like, okay, right now, like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And time kind of flies. You lose track of time. I'm actually experiencing that on this podcast right now a little bit, like it's like what I'm doing, what I'm supposed to be doing. Right. And I had that intuition that this thought just kept coming in my head. You're going to be happy here in doing this type of thing. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but that intuition was there. But then, so that was my first trip to the apostolic school. I went to Cheshire and New Hampshire when I was 10. And when I came back, my mom was going to pick me up at the airport, to pick me up, but she actually died in a car accident on the way, and it was like the darkest thing, the most terrible thing that has happened to me. It's like, it was so dark. And what was so dark about it was the contrast of, I just had this feeling like everything's good, and then everything is terrible. You know what I mean? Like, it's just this, every human being, I think, experiences this. It's like sometimes you just have everything's good and then everything is just terrible. It was so dark. And I just had these questions in my head. How do you put the dark and the light together? Like, how can those coexist? How is that even possible? You know what I mean? Like, how do you go through and just not give up? You know what I mean? Like if everything was just sucked all the time, okay, maybe you could deal with that, right? But sometimes we get these moments of like real, like, yes, everything's good, and then it's not. Like, what is that all about? And I had, at a very young age, I had to work through that in a very strong way.
Yeah.
And eventually I was able to put those two together. And like, yeah, that was the most terrible thing that's happened to me. But this is going to sound weird, but I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm not saying I wanted, no, I did not want my mom to die. That's not for a second what I'm saying. But that experience has made me a stronger person, and obviously I'm a spiritual person. So there's a connectedness that I have to my mother that is incredible. So, a little bit more detail of the story. Obviously when I heard the news, I was distraught, and I was just like, I needed some sort of a sign to keep going. I needed something, something to help me keep going with this, because it was just really awful. And I was very confused, and I remember kind of asking God, give me a little sign here to help me out. And it came a few hours later. The police that had actually, the thing was, there was a like a surprise snowfall in April in Kansas, and there was a bridge that had, the ice had frozen on it, but the rest of the road hadn't. So she hit that bridge and just flew off. And the police that found her, they came a few hours later to the house after I had gotten back from the airport and stuff. And they actually, they gave a rosary to my dad. And that rosary, my mom actually died with the rosary in her hand. She had the habit of just praying the rosary in the car. And for me, that was very comforting. It was like, okay, she passed away doing what she loved to do, and connected in a way to God. And so that, for me, now I pray the rosary. I always imagine her like right here, like she's right here. And I guess you say, what's the happiest moment? It's when I'm able to connect these two things and have them there. And I know you said it can't be the ordination, but I'm going to say it was, because because you know how you do in the ordination when you lay down and they do the litany of the saints, they do all the saint stuff. While I was there, you can believe this or not or whatever, but I just felt her. She was like laying down right next to me, and I almost physically felt her arm like over me, and I just burst out crying. And it was about just, we humans are able to put this darkness and this light together. And when you can do that, the light becomes that much brighter, and the darkness just starts to go away. If you're able to confront the darkness, right? And I had to do that in my own life. And actually, now thinking about it, it's like a lot of stories of ex-legionaries, right? Hopefully we can find a way, all of us, to take the darkness that this caused everyone and find a way to make it light. Hopefully, and Yeah. That was a good question. I think that's been, yeah.
That was a wonderful answer. I didn't expect that.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you, Jacob or Spencer, do you guys have any questions? Or
I got a couple stories, just one-off stories that I want.
yeah,
If we
definitely.
could do that. If
Yeah.
we're going too long, you guys want to do another one?
No.
Just two stories that come to mind. So this is at the Apostolic School. Remember when the founder died?
Yes.
And do you remember what we did? We did like an emergency mass. Like we stopped all classes and
Yeah.
we had like a mass and stuff like that. And so I had this experience. You're Joseph Berna?
Yeah.
So Joseph Berna, he'd play the organ, right? And he'd do all the songs and everything. So we were preparing the mass and he's choosing the songs for the mass. And he right before since this mass wasn't programmed, we used to have the little papers with the program, all the songs for every day, and you'd go in and look. And he comes up to me and he's like, okay, what do we do these songs? And I was thinking for the first song, we could do For All the Saints. When the founder died, we could do the song. Do you remember that song? For all the saints who from their labor rest. And he was like, and I understand, like the way we thought back then, he thought it'd be good, it'd be a good song to do. And something in me was just like, no. So, we're not doing that song. So I said, just do Come Holy Ghost for the first one. Let's not do For All the Saints, and let's just do Come Holy Ghost, And I was like, he's not a saint yet, and so I'm so glad that I did that. Something in me was just like, no, we're not doing that. And I think we sang Come Holy Ghost instead. But it's just a funny memory I have. And just an intuition in me is like, no, we're not doing that. And now I look back, I'm so glad I didn't say yes to that, Yeah. It just kind of shows how we thought, and I'm not blaming Joseph at all, but
no, that was the mindset. Do you remember going down to Cheshire for the mass? We had a memorial.
That was like
mass.
A couple days later, right?
Yeah.
So this was like the mass we did the same day at the school, and then we went
right.
Down. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't remember the song selection for that, but I'm pretty sure if it had been For All the Saints, I would remember it to this day.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I stopped it. Yeah. Another memory I have, this is another moment where I got really angry. So this is now 2010, I think this would have been. And so all the information is just coming out excruciatingly slow. Step by step, it's like, okay, now he could have more kids. Now those accusations in 1996 are they could be true, and then they're probably true, and then they're most definitely true. And then it was like he was drug use, it's just everything. At some point I'm like, nothing surprises me anymore. It's just like everything, But one that really got me was there was this book that we had called Psalter of My Days, Salterio de mis días. It was a selection of poems that the founder wrote that I really liked. Like I actually enjoyed them, and I really liked them. And we get a notice on the board one day and a whole thing explaining that the founder plagiarized them, right? And that he took them from somebody else. This guy named Luis Hernando, something like that, and in Spain, who he called it Psalter of My Hours, Salterio de mis horas, and it was exactly the same. Right? It was he changed a couple things here and there, but he just totally plagiarized it. And so I read that, and again, I don't like being lied to. It's just one of my things. I don't like being lied to. So I went to my room after reading it. I was so mad, and the book was there on the shelf. It's Maciel and Salterio de mis días. And so I grabbed the book, and my window was open. It was summertime. So I just grabbed the book and I threw it out the window. I was so mad. I just went, get out of here. I couldn't the extent of your lies just went so far, that you would even do something like this, something that wasn't yours. And later I like checked to make sure I didn't kill any brothers walking down, and I went and got my book again and brought it back up. It was just a moment of, just like, yeah, it's just so frustrating, and I still read sometimes the original author, because I really liked what he said, like I really like this stuff. And it's kind of good that it wasn't his, because now, I
can still enjoy it. Yeah.
Enjoy it. Yeah. But then looking back, I was like, his letters, there's nothing original there. Like, honestly, I look back, like St. Paul said it way better. All these things. It's just the ideas of St. Paul that are rehashed. And I was trying, honestly, for a while, there was a moment when I was trying to reconcile all this. I was trying to go through, there's got to be something like original here. And there are some things in our constitutions that I find to be original, but again, he didn't write those. Like, those were written by a bunch of people. So it's just like, that's something that took time. Like, all these things took time for us to come to grips with and just realize. But that was a moment too, where it's just like, the extent of your lies. He lied to my face, and then he made me like this book, think it was his, and it's not. And like, so I was just things like that just really, yeah. I didn't like that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would,
Yeah. Not many people like being lied to, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah. The plagiarizing thing I've heard before, no specifics, but I've heard that he
it was that book. That was the big one. That was the one
Yeah.
that he just took. It's incredible. It's like word for word.
Really?
And then, his story he told when he wrote that was the whole great blessing thing. That's another thing. I was just like, how, like, you guys know about like the great blessing, right? Like the
marketing.
Yeah. It's just like crazy how he twisted that on his head. And part of what we've been doing in the Legion now, and it's difficult to do, is to really find out what happened. Like, I know we've gone to the Vatican archives to find all of the documents and everything, and we're getting a better understanding of our history, and really understanding what happened and how far the abuse actually went. Part of that, we've been doing that for a long time now, and a couple of years, I think it's been a couple of years now, we put out the list of, all the abuses that has happened. And that was fruit of an investigation. There might be more, but we're really trying to get it all out there, to get the real story out there, but it took time. You got to understand, it was hard because we couldn't trust our own archives. Right. It's like, we couldn't trust that stuff. And all the stories so it's like, there are legionaries who were dedicated to interviewing people to really get it out and finally get that horrific number out that the founder probably abused more than 60 people. It's like, it's just, but we're pretty sure that number is right. It could be more. It's not less. So it's like, it's just insane. And then to think that he was able more than once to pull off this whole I'm being persecuted thing, and then create a whole story, just the way the great blessing, the way it was explained to us, which could be a fine story. Like, there's nothing, people being persecuted or wrongly, that happens, but that he was able to turn that and use that story so false. Like, I just think it's just, it kind of sickens me now to think about it, that he was able to do that. Yeah.
Oh man, that's
I just have one last question. What's your favorite sandwich?
Yeah.
no particular reason for that, I want to make sure I got it.
They do have Subway in Korea.
Yeah. I love
Fresh.
Subway. I like Quiznos. There's a chicken parmesan sandwich I like a lot. Yeah. So the sandwiches.
Nice.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for a DoorDash driver. No particular reason.
I was actually listening to that episode just because I'm trying to wrap my head around the whole thing of
well, we weren't very insightful, but
right. Well, I was trying, what do people think? And I've been trying to figure that one out. But that's why I usually just listen. I've listened, I think, every one of the podcasts where you've interviewed people. I think I've listened to them, And then there was one where you guys read from your notebooks, which was hilarious.
Yeah,
That was great. And then I listened to that one just because I was curious. And then 20 minutes in, they're like, "Oh, Legionary's listening to this." I was like, "Wait a second." I am. Yeah, that was great.
That was good.
Yeah. So we do owe you a sandwich, and
Yes.
if you're willing to wait until I go to Korea,
Oh
be
yeah,
more than willing to.
I'm really looking forward to that. By the way, I hope it all
Yeah.
works out and you're able to.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
gonna
I'll
be-
take the whole community to dinner.
I think they would like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I have to say, it was very brave of you to come join us. I know we can be kind of critical sometimes, and like, so like
vulgar
I appreciate like your bravery and like your honesty, and like just really appreciate your time too, man. Thank you.
Oh yeah, well, and you guys have been really accommodating. Like, yeah, same thing here. And I asked, I wasn't sure if you guys, wanted a legionary on, but just listening, I realized, we've got way more in common than you think.
Yeah.
Because of the common experience we had of like the cultish like behaviors, and we've all had to try and overcome that in different ways, right? So, I just felt like, I think it's the same story in many ways, and yeah, thank you guys too for being so accommodating. It was fun. I had a good time. I hope I didn't talk too much. I was just trying to tell some stories and stuff. But yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah.
Thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording here, but this has been the CFC.